America has had its fair share of bombers all across the country, like the Unabomber, who with countless attempts tried and sometimes succeeded in bombing universities and airports, or the Boston bomber, used pressure cookers for the containers for the explosives at the 2013 Boston Marathon to end countless innocent lives. And let's not forget about the collar bomber, who forced a pizza delivery man to rob a bank by attaching an explosive collar to his neck. But there is an almost unknown story I find extremely fascinating, and the criminal is not as well known as these ones I describe. I'll call him the Forgotten Bomber. One FBI agent described this case as the biggest event he has ever been involved in his FBI career. So let's go above the brain and find out why. And if you like the content, don't forget to like or subscribe. My goal is to get this channel to 1,000 subs by the end of the year. Thank you to those who support. Now, let's get back to the story at hand. The year is 1980. The time is 6:30 a.m. on Tuesday, August 26. And the place is Harvey Hotel, located in Stateline, Nevada. And the thing is a suspicious metallic silver box about the size of a coffee table, and also had a smaller looking box attached to it that had about 28 metal switches on the side of the mysterious object, with 3 rows of 6 switches and 2 rows of 5 switches, each labeled with a number sticker. And it was discovered by Bob Vinson, the graveyard ship supervisor, and is seen to appear out of thin air inside the hotel and placed outside the telecom equipment room in the employees-only portion of the second floor of the hotel. Bob was very confused and baffled about the appearance of this large object because he didn't hear any kind of disturbance or movements of any object of that size outside his office. What was even stranger, the intruders even managed to put 4 wooden blocks under the large object and still didn't make a peep performing that task. The wooden blocks even left deep indents on the carpet that showed how massive this object was. Vincent had found that some of the keyholes for the doors leading into the area had been hastily jammed, using what appeared to be toothpicks and glue. He looked further and found the envelope with Harvey's management typewritten on it laid near the object. Bob was extremely curious and nervous about this letter, to the point where he called the security of the Harvey Hotel, which requested the sheriff deputies, who requested the fire department. So it's clear that anyone and everyone was very afraid to touch it. But finally, someone had the courage to open the envelope, and it revealed to have a 3-page letter stating that the device was in fact a bomb. Immediately after reading the letter, Harvey's casino requested that everyone evacuate immediately, which was hundreds inside the building. And the National Guard evacuated all the citizens in the nearby area of the Harvey Casino. Also, the bomb squad was called to help with the investigation. They was brainstorming and trying to use penetrating instruments and tools to try to defuse the bomb. But finally, they used an X-ray machine and sent the film to be developed. The X-rays taken earlier showed that the switches were connected to a circuitry inside, and it seemed likely that the procedure for bomb deactivation would be to throw these switches into a certain combination, possibly in a strict sequence. Having just one of the 28 toggles switched on must have been psychological torture for anyone within clanking distance of the device. And the letters from the Harvey Hotel read,
"We demand $3 million and use $100 bills. They must be unmarked, unbugged, and chemically untreated. If we find anything wrong with the money, we will stop all instructions for moving the bomb. This money is to be delivered by helicopter." The helicopter pilot is to park at 2300 hours as close as possible to the LA building by the light at the Lake Tahoe airport. It is to face the east. The pilot has to be alone and unarmed. The pilot is to get out and stand by the chain link fence gate. He is to wait for further instructions, which will be delivered by taxi that will be hired. The driver will know nothing. They may also be delivered by a private individual or through the nearby public phone at exactly 12:10 a.m.
Attempt was made to deliver the ransom in Los Angeles. Special Agent Joe Cook climbed into the FBI's helicopter, completed his pre-flight check, hoisted the aircraft into the air, and headed north by northwest. Special Agent Cook landed the helicopter at Lake Tahoe Airport and turned off the engine. As airport workers topped off the fuel tank, Cook stood near the phone, as instructed by the letter. At about 10 minutes past midnight, the phone rang.
Your instructions are located beneath the table in front of you. You have 3 minutes.
Cook was slightly nervous because there was no table in front of him. He ran his hands along the bottom surfaces of the metal shelving. He felt something. Special Agent Cook peeled a Scotch tape envelope from the underside of the phone shelf. It was addressed to pilot. But the money drop never happened. The money was supposed to be dropped off by helicopter to an area 15 miles south of the airport near Echo Summit. Strobe lights were supposed to guide the helicopter to further instructions. No lights were ever seen, and the helicopter later ran out of fuel and returned to South Lake Tahoe. I'll give you an answer why they didn't see the strobe lights. But let me give you a background story of the family behind the entering of Harvey Hotel and sneaking a massive bomb into the building. Meet Birges Sr, or better known as Big John. He was originally born in Hungary in 1922 with the surname of Jonas Birges and spent majority of his years in Budapest during World War II. Hitler and his German army occupied Hungary in 1944, his home country. He enlisted in the Royal Hungarian Army Air Force, and there he met Elizabeth, who later became his wife after she divorced her husband. They later immigrated with him to the United States back in 1957. While living in the United States, he changed his name to John, and Elizabeth changed her name to Elizabeth. Later, they started a family and settled in Fresno, California, by having 2 boys, John Jr. and Jimmy. Over the years, Big John took advantage of America's capitalistic culture by starting a small business and by purchasing a restaurant. And by the time he was 50, he was a multi-millionaire. But Elizabeth filed for divorce and moved into a trailer close to her old home to be a good mom and close to her kids. Meanwhile, Big John took up flying as a hobby and sometimes attempted to fly helicopters on occasion. So naturally, after being divorced, he would frequently fly his personal 6-seater airplane out to Lake Tahoe, just over the California-Nevada border, to gamble around town, and he was widely known as a high roller in the area. But sadly, just like all gambling addicts, the well runs dry. So after clearing all his bank accounts of cash, he started to sell his landscaping equipment and eventually selling his landscaping company that made him a millionaire. In 1973, Elizabeth disappeared mysteriously, notably with her handbag still in her trailer and her car still in her driveway. Her body was discovered 3 days later, decomposing in the field near the house. But the police called her murder a suicide because drugs was found in her system. His financial problems just kept on getting worse and worse. He burned down a restaurant that he owned for years to get the insurance money he received, which was $300,000 from the insurance company. But sadly, he wasted all the money gambling to try to get back his riches. He had to sell his house to appease debt collectors. Shortly after that, Big John discovered he had cancer in his abdomen and had surgery to remove half of his intestines. And he survived. But over the years, Big John was highly suicidal and lost over $600,000 at the Harvey Casino. It got so bad to the point where one night, Big John was humiliated when Harvey's staff asked him and his girlfriend to vacate his complimentary room so they can lounge another guest there. And also, he had multiple bounce checks at the casino. So with that embarrassment, he has to plan to create what he called the machine and deliver it to Harvey's casino. Now, since we're caught up on the background of the suspects, I'll explain why they didn't see the strobe lights. About 2 hours earlier, before the FBI agent's helicopter turned back, Big John, Jimmy, and John Jr. was driving to the destination, and they realized that they had forgot 12-volt automotive battery they needed to electrify their heavy-duty strobe lights. So they viciously turned around and looked to exhaustion for a battery. Finally, after searching for a long period of time, they actually found the gas station that sold what they were looking for, and they stormed back up the mountain to complete the mission. John Jr. then dropped off the rest of the family in the forest so he can go back to the payphone and call the pilot to instruct him on what to do next. Their instructions had told the pilot to land near the strobe lights and locate an envelope containing further instructions. But his boys had a scheme to steal the guns and planned to steal a helicopter and its $3 million while the pilots was in the woods searching for a non-existent note. They would take off in the helicopter and fly to another clearing where John Jr. would be waiting to receive the cash. Big John and Jimmy would then fly to Cameron Park Airport, where they would land and meet their getaway driver. Then they'd all meet back home in Fresno, California, $3 million richer. But obviously, none of that went according to plan. The helicopter was supposed to arrive around 12:30 a.m. and they sat and waited for a few hours until they realized the helicopter was never coming because they put up the strobe lights too late. Around 2:30 a.m., the family got the word from Nevada Governor Bob on the radio station that the hotel is prepared to comply and is standing by as before. So, they were very optimistic that there was still hope to collect that good old $3 million. So with that in mind, John Jr. used a payphone to call the Douglas County Sheriff's Office. But the time was a little off because it was 6:43 a.m., just a bit over the 24 hours since Bob found the bomb in the casino. So John Jr. needed a distraction to buy more time. So he told the dispatcher to tell the bomb squad to flip number switch 5 and then wait for further instructions. But of course, switch number 5 was a dummy switch and did absolutely nothing. In the meanwhile, a group consisting of FBI special agents, the local fire chief, the state fire marshal, a military bomb disposal squad, representatives from the Nuclear Emergency Support Team, and scientists from both the Naval Surface Warfare Center and Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory will all meet to discuss actually flipping the switch number 5 and if it could actually delay the timer. Eventually, they called the Nuclear Energy Search Team and was told to consult with an expert around the country. During one of these phone calls, someone from the U.S. Explosion Disposal Facility came up with an idea, and the other investigators agreed that it was their least bad option. So basically, the police and the FBI decided to try to disarm the bomb with a small explosion device using a remote control. So about 34 hours after the bomb was placed in Harvey's hotel, the bomb squad left the building and walked across the street to take shelter from whatever is to come. The police even warned citizens that a highly explosive device will soon be detonated. Please take cover for your own safety. Outside the hotel, was a spectacle with about 1,000 spectators having fun, drinking beers, with t-shirts on that says, "I got bombed at Harvey's." Captain Frank held the wires to remote detonator. "Fire in the hole," he warned. The bomb was triggered, and there was a massive explosion. And the people with "I got bombed at Harvey" t-shirts cheered victoriously. Harvey Gross, the owner of the hotel, was extremely devastated by the news. Big John and the rest of the family heard of the news of the explosion going off in the hotel. And Big John was devastated. His plans of regaining his fortune has failed miserably. And all he can do is watch the replay of the explosion on TV going off over and over and over again. The bomb squad and FBI agents finally made his way back into the casino to see the massive explosion and how the bomb was made. The hotel was in complete darkness, and as they walked into the building, the insides have been ripped to shreds. But after further looking, even after all the damages, the building seemed to be highly repairable. And because of all the police evacuations of the nearby citizens, the total deaths and injuries totaled to 0. And with the quote-unquote machine not being a threat, the bomb squad could actually look closely at the makeup of the machine without risking their lives. So, what they found out was that the machine actually did contain a timer, a long delay type, ordinarily used in integration sparkling systems. No one but Big John knew exactly how long it had been set to actually detonate. But at its maximum, it would be about 8 days before that would happen. Had it reached the end of its cycle, it would have closed a detonation circuit. Some of the 28 toggle switches on the face of the device were dummies, and a few were able to disable the tilt sensor, thus making the machine safe to move before the timer actually expired. Toggling any of the others would cause a detonation, and the dynamite would go off instantly. The FBI gathered intelligence by interviewing regulars at the Harvey's Hotel and Casino, especially those that was there on Tuesday, August 26, 1980, around 5:30 a.m. By doing that, they finally caught a break, when some regulars said that they had seen 2 men in blue overalls come out of a white Dodger van to what looked like to be office equipment with a cardboard box reading IBM. But that just wasn't enough. So the FBI tried to push their investigation even further by offering $200,000 in reward for useful information in the case. And some suspects were questioned, but they were all false leads, and that was very disappointing to the investigation. The FBI still investigated for months upon months. And the Harvey Hotel actually reopened May 13, 1981, with a cost of over $18 million to fix all the damages. But the $18 million came with upgrades to the building, like gleaming glass, luxurious Italian silk, and new tile work, and a new security system and surveillance. Obviously. Later on that year, the FBI got a phone call by someone claiming that they knew who put the bomb in the Harvey's casino. They mostly called because the FBI raised the reward from $200,000 to $500,000. Who said solving cases are cheap? Well, anyways, after a couple phone calls, the authorities agreed to meet with him in person. And what he told them was that he had heard about the plot way before the event even happened by an ex-girlfriend, who was told by her ex-boyfriend, and who happened to be John Jr. The FBI had actually questioned John Jr. already. He drove a white Dodge van, and his license plate number had been noted on the Tahoe area hotel registration slip for the night prior to the bombing delivery. But the FBI, no informant, had a key detail to add. The mastermind of the extortion plan was his father, Big John. So, the FBI decided to pay Big John a visit at his home and asked him about the incident at the Harvey's Hotel. He told them that he heard about it on TV and was a regular at the place, and he owed them cash. The agents asked if they could search the house. Big John explained that it was owned by his girlfriend, so he could not legally consent to a search. The FBI began to become impatient and just asked him if he had anything to do with the bombing. Big John took this as an opportunity to tell them how he would have committed the crime. The FBI then put him under surveillance and watched him for weeks. And sometimes they paid him a visit in between. And his moods varied by the day. On August 14, 1981, investigators took his son, John Jr., in for questioning. And they told him that they knew where he was between August 25th to August 26th of last year, because they had a speeding ticket with his name on it from the morning after the incident. The citation noted that he had been driving a gold Volvo, and there had been 2 other men in the car with him, and they had other incriminating evidence against him. So the FBI wanted to make a deal, and they told him that his only chance to receive leniency from the U.S. attorney would be to tell the FBI everything he knew about the bombing. They also gave his brother that old deal too, and they both spilled all the beans about their father, leaving no stone unturned. The next day, Big John was leaving their Fresno neighborhood in the gold Volvo when 2 unmarked sedans blocked the road just ahead of them. FBI agents emerged and arrested him on charges including attempting to interfere with commerce by threats of violence, interstate travel in aid of extortion, transportation of explosions in interstate commerce, and conspiracy to attempt extortion. During the Harvey trial, the boys told the courts that they absolutely thought their father's plan to plant a bomb was a joke, so they laughed it off. But find out there was a truth when the prank seemed to be getting out of hand, when Big John asked his girlfriend and Jimmy to help him pack the dynamite into the large metal box he had spent weeks upon weeks building. At first, Big John asked if his own sons can deliver the bomb, and when they denied his request, he hired 2 employees from the landscaping business to handle it. So they pushed the bomb into Harvey's elevator. He also jammed the locks with toothpicks and glue to prevent interruption, labeled the boxes, activated various detonation circuits, and the crew that he hired for the job later on said that they did not know that they was carrying the bomb this whole time, but they found out after the fact. During the trial, Big John admitted that he did bomb the building, but he only built it for self-defense. And he also told a ridiculous story wherein a mafia-affiliated henchman from Harvey's Hotel had extorted him into constructing and delivering the device for insurance fraud. Basically a Ponzi scheme of sorts. He also said the mafia had given him an ultimatum, he claimed. Wreck the casino or we wreck your bones. That was his testimony. On March 7, 1985, Big John was found guilty and was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. The 2 men he hired were also sentenced too. They got 7 years. Neither John Jr. nor Jimmy served any time at all because of their willingness to cooperate with the case. Big John was serving his time in a federal prison in California. He would talk to his sons on the phone from time to time, but never saw each other ever again. During the years, Big John died of liver cancer at the Southern Nevada Correctional Center in 1996 at age 74. This case taught the FBI a whole lot about bombs. There's a replica that they built for the trial that remains in use today as a training device in the FBI's laboratory division. Big John's bomb was the largest to go off in the United States of America until the bombing of the World Trade Center in 1983. Despite how crazy that sounds, still for some odd reason, this is not well known to many at all. That's why I've coined him the Forgotten Bomber. And Agent Bill Honky gave the most reasonable answer why. When asked why so few people these days seem to remember the event that unfolded in Lake Tahoe on August 26th through the 27th of 1980, his answer was, no one died.